Hey everybody, I want to welcome you to another edition of Dog Pound Radio tonight. I not only have a former student, but I would call him a decent friend. Although we're both so damn busy that we just follow each other, right? I mean, that's kind of the way it is, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of my relationships these days, it seems like.
So this is Zach Bogle, and I can remember grading Zach Bogle and Tyler Walker's final project in world history, and I'll tell you that it was a little bit over the top, especially when you were in that door. Do you still have that video?
Yeah, it's so funny you said that because I was thinking about that earlier today. It's on YouTube, but I'm not gonna say what it is, but and I'll say this. Um, we made that video and it was absolutely insane and probably should have gotten in a lot of trouble for it, but I remember exactly. I'm not gonna say the subject, but I remember exactly what I was supposed to remember. So you did a plus job of letting us be creative, but also it worked because I remember what we were supposed to remember. So
Yeah, I can't even remember the name of the project, to be honest with you, but you guys like went over the top, and I can remember Tyler's mom kind of giving me the dickens because they said, "Man, they're spending all their time on this assignment and they can't focus on their math. What the hell's going on?"
yeah, I mean, Tyler and I have been making videos together forever. And for those who don't know, he's the other part of Stalemates. He's the one who kind of helped me get it going. But yeah, we've been making videos forever, and I remember taking your class, and that project came up, and I don't remember if we suggested it or if that was just one of the things that you were allowing for that assignment. It was you could get creative and do a video, but we ended up making a video about. I'll say what it is, but because I don't think people will find it, but it's called. It was about the Marshall Plan, and we made a video just explaining what the Marshall Plan was, and yeah, it was probably one of my favorite things that I worked on in high school.
Now, was that was it international relations or something like that? Was that course?
I don't remember. I think so. It was one of those what are those calls like is it wasn't an auxiliary class or whatever? Like you don't have to take this class, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was but you have to take one of the classes or whatever. And uh just I remember just having a lot of fun in that class, but also learning too.
Yeah, yeah. The biggest thing that I always and I used to drive people crazy, especially those that had to have this freaking list, right? Oh my God, Banks, can't you tell me exactly what to do? But I was always one of those guys that I wanted you to get creative and I wanted you to roll with it. And I'm not saying that I started your guys' foundation on stalemates, but I did get you an interest in that, right?
I would say that on like a serious note, there's definitely a lot of teachers that don't encourage that, and I think a lot of times these days people uh talk down on like education and say like, they don't teach you anything that you'll learn in school or whatever. And I think a lot of those people just didn't have the right teachers. Like, um, for example, like in that class, that IR class or history class, whichever one it was, like that to me would have been a very boring class, but the way that you can make something fun and make a kid like myself, and I don't want to speak for Tyler, but I think he's probably got just as much going on upstairs as I do. And you got to figure out how do I reach these kind of kids. And to some kids they might have hated that class because they didn't like being vocal or creative or whatever, but the fact that we were able to do that, yeah, I would say it definitely helped. Like we're addicted to making videos, like um from the beginning, and just you tell us we can make a video for a project instead of writing A, B, C, or D down. Heck yeah, I'm down for that. So yeah, I'd say you definitely had an influence.
Oh, that's it's phenomenal to have had you guys in class and kind of watching kind of how you're developing into the young men and and making Iowa great in my opinion. And I'm one of your guys' biggest fans, man. This thing called stalemates. I understand your love and your passion, and that's one thing that I've been trying to preach to all of my students, and also this new book that's coming out, my man. Uh, if if you're passionate about, if you find something you're so passionate about, you'll never work a day in your life. And I see a lot of smiles on your face, man, when you get to engage and be a part of not only the wrestling community, but everything that you do.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing about wrestling is you don't do it or follow it or be in the media business for money because there isn't any. Okay. So that's the first thing. If you don't really love doing it, then we would have probably stopped doing it in year one. And what I mean by that is like if I wasn't a fan of the sport of wrestling and everything that it taught me and everything, then I probably would never I wouldn't continue to do it because it's not like we're getting paid millions of dollars and stuff like that. And I tell people all the time, like, even if I didn't do stalemates or whatever, we would still be sitting around talking about wrestling, having the same conversations. The only difference is it's on the internet. And we just both liked making video content and we felt like there was a need in wrestling. And yeah, I mean we love it and we just continue to keep on doing it.
Well, the Pin Doctors, which is located, I think, about 40 minutes north and east of me. He talks really highly of you guys, and he's excited with your content. Are you guys merely focused on college wrestling, or do you ever engage in like what's going on in the high school currently?
Pretty much just college for the pretty much just because that's the biggest target audience for wrestling. So, and that's the thing that I just follow the most. I follow high school wrestling at more the national level rather than like just the local or Iowa level. I know a lot of the kids in Iowa just because I do follow it, but um we'll follow some of the bigger recruits and whatnot, but for the most part, we just do college wrestling and then a little bit of like Olympics and stuff.
Now, I know that you're a big time Iowa State fan, and I am wearing a Hawkeyes shirt, but only because my daughter goes there.
Right.
I would say that it was interesting that the wrestling team would score the average of what the football team was scoring all year. I
Yeah.
know that was a dig.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, hey, they made it to the championship game, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But and we can talk crap here in just a little bit, but let's go back to that Iowa State meet. You were up there. It was fiery. I there's a young man. I think his last name is Frost. Is it Evan Frost?
yep.
I became an overnight like fan of this guy, and man, you want to talk about a beast? Did he get second this weekend?
He did, yeah. So, yeah, that kid's a super beast. What's interesting about him is his true freshman year, right? He did not have a very good record and took some not pretty losses, and um, if there is a pretty loss, I guess. But he ends up turning everything around. He grinds really hard. I go up there sometimes and watch him. I get to go up there usually once or twice in the summer and watch workouts or whatever, and uh, just he's always somebody that's always there and always grinding, and you know that he's a smart kid and a tough kid, and so you put all those things together and you can really make a lot of progress, and he's done that. So he's going to be fun to watch throughout the year, and yeah, he just had a good weekend out in Vegas, which is one of the toughest tournaments that they have throughout the season. So there's only a couple tournaments that these guys have before the big tournament where you get to see a lot of really good kids, and CKLV is one of them, and he went out there and wrestled everybody hard that they put in front of him, and he got second.
How many matches do they have to do out there? Is it 4 a day?
That one I'm thinking off the top of my head, it's probably 4 to 5. It really depends on how much you win and lose. Because if you lose, you could wrestle a bunch on the backside. But I want to say he wrestled 4 times. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I'm not very good with the numbers,
Oh, you're good. You're good.
but uh, but yeah, it just depends, and they break it up into 2 different days. So I want to say he wrestled 4 times.
What about this new 3 point takedown? I kind of like it.
Yeah, I like it. It's also um it's also brought up some, anytime there's rule changes, it's going to change the way that the game is played, right? And so it's brought up some unintended consequences, but also some more interesting strategies. So we're still really early with it, and we're kind of learning every weekend that goes by different examples and scenarios where you're like, dang, that wouldn't have happened if it was a 2 point takedown, and now it's a little bit different. And even like strategy, you're seeing guys who maybe weren't the best wrestlers are getting a lot of more wins now because they don't have to wrestle on bottom nearly as much. It seems like, these guys want to be on their feet more because they can get 3 points instead of two or whatever. So it's changing the way things are. And I think people I go back and forth. I like it. And then sometimes if it doesn't go the way I want, I'm like, well, if that was a 2 point takedown like last year, then we wouldn't have lost. But I like it. It just takes some getting used to.
Now that Kennedy match, I obviously, moving the weights around kind of screwed Iowa State, in many regards. All right, I'm just going to throw that out there. I can speak frank, right? It is Dog Pound Radio,
Yeah.
but go back to that Kennedy match, man. He was almost out of gas. He was almost toast, and if he wouldn't have had that 3 point strategy, maybe he could have kind of lobbed in.
Yeah, I think the coaches made a pretty critical error there, I guess. Coach Dresser said that um they were going to take the blame for that loss because they thought that the they didn't realize who had riding time there, right? So they thought it would be tied and they would go into overtime, so they said keep him down, but really we were down by 1 and there's 15 seconds left on the clock. The Iowa guy who's winning by a point is on the bottom, right? And so you want him to get back up to his feet so you can try to take him down to get 3 points, and then you can take the lead. But apparently they didn't they didn't see the score clock right, or I don't know what happened, but yeah, they lost, and that was a really tough one. Um, MJ Gaetan, the kid from Iowa State, I got to meet his parents before the dual meet. They came to our social that we had, and they were just super pumped to be there in Iowa watching their son, and they're from California, and so it was probably really hard for everybody, involved, unless you're an Iowa fan or Patrick Kennedy, I guess.
Well, how many times would you have thrown the brick? Be honest.
I mean, you know, I I think that was one of those things. The first one, the first time that there was a brickable moment, we'll say. Uh, I don't think that they wanted to use it at that point because we were supposed to give up bonus points at that weight and we didn't, right? So they're thinking, well, let's, this isn't so bad for us, right? Because we didn't give up a tech or a pin. So they're thinking, let's just save that brick. It's kind of a win for us anyways, even though we didn't win. We didn't give up a ton of points. And then the other match with the brickable moment, it did get reviewed, but it got reviewed by still had that brick. And then after that, there really wasn't a bunch of matches that had something questionable, I guess. So but yeah, it's terrible. You don't really want to, you know, take your challenges home with you. You can't do anything with them.
Absolutely. Now, Patrick Lamb, he's my principal, big time wrestling fan. He says that time ran out. Do you think time ran out on that takedown? I mean,
Uh,
they did review it, right?
so there's a new rule in college wrestling, or it's a new old rule, depending on how you want to look at it, called reaction time, right? So the way that it reads is it's similar to, you're a football guy, right?
Yep.
It's very similar to having control of the ball and making what they call a football movement. All right. So what a football movement is very up for discretion or whatever, right? It's up for interpretation. And so what that means is they want you to catch the ball and then make a football movement that confirms that you have control of the ball before we consider it a completion. Okay? Like the whole Des caught it thing, with Green Bay and Dallas back in the day. So it's very similar in wrestling now, where if I take you down and your hand, if I'm behind you and your hand touches the mat for a second, but you pop right back up and it didn't really give you a whole lot of time to like react, then it's then now it's not a takedown. Last year that was a takedown. Now you have to take a guy down and hold him there for at least enough time that they call reaction time to where you have you have control. The problem was there. He got behind him, and it looked like there was control because they didn't move, but it reaction time is not defined by it doesn't say in the rule book 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. It just says reaction time. It doesn't. It's a real gray area. So there is photographic evidence of people that have screenshotted or taken pictures, or actually a photographer. I have possession. I could get possession of this photo that could be very detrimental to the outcome.
Oh,
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But there is a photo out there of him in what appears to be a takedown position that, and there's a 1 second on the clock in the background, but um it just one of those things, like, it came down to fractions of a second, and sometimes it goes your way and sometimes it doesn't. Didn't go Iowa State's way, but, the good news is there's 7 minutes to wrestle in a match, and you can't really boil it down to 1 second, so.
now, how angry was the crowd because it was up in Ames?
Um, they I mean, they were angry, but I think a lot of them were first time wrestling people, and so I think it's like hard to be angry if you don't know anything about water polo and you go, you're not going to be super passionate about foul that you don't really know if there's even fouls in that sport. I don't know, but um, like so I don't know if I mean they were definitely like booing and stuff, but it wasn't like they were throwing beer cans on the mat or anything like that. Like it was a respectable amount of angriness.
So it wasn't quite like when I made a like when I made a crappy call like as a soccer official. You remember when you guys would take pictures and post that on Google? It's still on there.
First of all, I never man, it kinda hurts my heart that you remember all that stuff. Uh, those pictures are already on Google. That's how we got those pictures.
I'm here to tell you, folks, that these guys, man, they kind of ran the muck. Anyway, throw out there, Green Bay is up 14-6 on my Chiefs.
I'm a Green
That's
Bay fan.
not a good sign.
I'm a Green Bay fan, so here we are.
All right. So, and we would schedule a podcast on the night that we're playing against each other.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's okay. Uh, kind of back to our roots here. We look at Centerville being a big wrestling school from Michael Upnick, and then Matt Johnson, and then currently Whistler, I believe, is the head coach, and they're still rolling over there. I mean, what was it like being a part of, or what was wrestling practice like with Matt Johnson?
Coach Johnson was tough, but he was really tough, but he was you trusted him and you always felt like he was doing what was the right things, and I never really had any complaints about him. I always felt like he treated everybody fairly, and if you worked hard, you were rewarded for that, and if you didn't, they'd let you know. And there was times where other schools would come in and practice with us, and we knew that we were in better shape than them a lot of times, and we wrestled a really tough schedule throughout my career, and that was good for us. Centerville is known for having state champions. There's a lot of state champions, and one thing about our state champions are they come paddle tested when they get to the state tournament. And what I mean by that is, back in the day when TJ Siebolt wrestled for Centerville, right? He had Centerville on a very. This is what I heard. I don't know if this is true, but I believe it's true. I don't see why it would be not true. He had Centerville wrestle this really, really tough schedule because he wanted to wrestle the best kids, because TJ Siebolt was the number one kid in the country. So we go down to Kansas City. How many other Centerville teams go to Kansas City for sporting events? Probably none, right? So we were traveling to Kansas City. We would go to the biggest 3A tournament, which is the biggest class in Iowa, which is in Urbandale at Ed Winger. Some people say it's harder than the state tournament. We would go to Kirksville, which is a tough tournament. We went to Benton. I mean, we literally went all over the state. And so when our kids get to the state tournament, they might have 5 losses or 3 losses or 6 losses or even 10 losses or whatever. Um, where some schools like Albia, no shots fired at Albia, but those guys, those guys are really good wrestlers and stuff, and they were ranked really high. But a lot of them, they were like 40-0 or 42-0 or 38-0, and then they would get to the state tournament. And if you're not used to having tough match after tough match after tough match, sometimes you don't get the same results. And so um, Centerville has a really good program, and I just think there's a reason why there's multiple four timers from Centerville, and even going back to guys like Chad Zapital, who I think is one of the best college wrestlers of all time. He's from Centerville.
One cool thing about Zap and and the Fort Madison connection, Coach Ryan Smith was actually a teammate of Zap and the Brands brothers in that group, and he wrestled for Dan Gable, which is extremely awesome to hear those stories. I'm still kind of prying them out of him. He's kind of quiet about that, and I'm sure it's because of his son Teague and his daughter, who's an amazing wrestler in her own right. And it's exciting though, seeing that connection and the crossover. It is also exciting, Zach, that for the first time in my career, I actually stepped outside of my comfort level, and I'm actually in the wrestling room a little bit, volunteering and broadcasting. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. But man, it's exciting to be a part of that day to day grind that is wrestling. And here's the biggest question: what has wrestling taught you personally that's made you the man that you are today?
Um, for me, it was always like I was never like the toughest kid by any means, but um, obviously I'm skinny guy or whatever, and I always hated playing sports. Like I love playing football and stuff growing up, but when everybody else was growing and I was staying the same size, and everybody else was putting on a bunch of muscle and weight, and I didn't, it was always like, man, like how can I can't play basketball, I can't do
Not a
lot
bad tennis player.
not wasn't a bad tennis player, but I worked really hard, and that's what I learned from wrestling was how to work hard and get better at something. So tennis was something I had to get really, really good at, but or work really hard to get decent at. Um, but what wrestling taught me really or gave me was like confidence, because I always felt like like I never really loved wrestling at all. Like if you looked at my high school planners, it's so funny. You can see my planners like would be like 30, 29, 28, 27. And that was the number of practices that we had to the end of the year. But what I got from wrestling, and I said confidence because I knew how hard it was. It was super hard. I a lot of times did not enjoy the grind or the whatever, but what I liked was there was other kids that would show up that were tougher than me or whatever, were bigger than me, that would come to wrestling and they would quit after a week or 2 weeks, and I would be still doing it. And so I always thought like, if I'm willing to put in the work and do this, and I'm mentally stronger than a lot of people, it gave me a lot of confidence, because I'm like, that kid couldn't do it, he couldn't do it. And so it make me think like, well, what can I do that these guys can't? Like, you're always taught like, if you're smaller, this and that, you're not going to be beating this guy or this and that. But sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes it's like, hey, I'm mentally tougher than you, I'm mentally gonna, like, you might beat me in this, but I'm gonna beat you in this because I'm stronger upstairs than you are. And so wrestling just gave me that confidence to be like, hey, if I can do that, I can get through this, I can get through this. And like, I really learned to love it. And my relationship with wrestling was always up and down. I would do it, and then I'd tell my parents every year I'm not doing it next year, and then I, for some reason, you just keep doing it. And I think it's just because it makes you feel good when you do something really hard. It just makes you feel good. And then I think it taught me how to like set goals and achieve them. I had a coach, Anthony White, my senior year. Johnson had left, and one of the first things that he had done or he had did was he had us write down our goals. And I remember like Johnson had us do that sometimes, and he'll probably laugh when if he watches this or hears this. But like, I never did it. I never actually wrote it down. And then Anthony White made us do it. And I remember I wrote down like 30 wins because I wanted to win. I just thought that was like a pretty high number for me. And I remember like getting there and just being like, dang, like if I would have like, it almost felt like a video game or something, like I was trying to achieve this mission, and I, like, wrote it down, and I was gonna try to do it, and I did it, and then I was like, "Dang, that felt really good." And then, um, it's so funny you brought up pin doctors earlier. I'm kinda rambling here, but,
No, you're good.
I think this is important, just not because it's my story, but, you know, if somebody wants to wrestle one day, I hope that they can take away something from this. Um, but I remember you brought up pin doctors, and I've told it him and I've told him this story before, and I think I've talked about it. Uh, my senior year, I made it I made it. I think I won my sectional or something, and then I made it to districts, right? And so the way that districts is a four-man tournament. So if you win 2 matches, you go to state. Um, if you get top two, you go to state. If you don't, you go home. And it was my senior year, and I remember the night before I'd made it. I think I made it to districts one other year, and but like I knew I wasn't gonna make it and to state. But my senior year, I didn't think I was gonna make it either. That was my biggest thing. Was always like self belief. But I was reading there's forums online. There's a website called The Predicament, and The Predicament had these high school forums, and I clicked the 2A one, and there was a thread for my sectional or for my district. Okay, the winner set. I think it was winner set or Knoxville. I can't remember, but we go and I click it, and I reading, and they're talking about my weight, and they're predicting who's going to win, who's going to lose, and this guy wrote this long post about me and my bracket or whatever. And he's like, yeah, this kid's like, you know, he's decent or whatever, but you know, he's not gonna win. Like, he's not gonna win. Like he didn't say anything disrespectful or anything, but it was just like he was not predicting me to win. So, anyways, I'm standing there, they're doing the national anthem. I'm warming up, like I'm on the mat with my ankle band on, my headgear's on. I'm in the middle. They're doing the national anthem. Everyone else is calm, hands over their hearts, you know, hats are off. I'm in the middle there just thinking like, yeah, right, this is it. This could be your last tournament ever. And the thing is, like, everybody, even though nobody really cared, like it's so funny, like no one really cares. But in my mind, I'm like, everybody thinks you're gonna lose. Everybody's predicting you. Everybody on the internet's, although it's just probably one guy, is saying you're gonna lose. And so screw it. Just go out there and, you know, try to win or whatever. And so I remember the match starts and I shot in on a shot right away. I had no business taking this kid down. This kid, you know, I think he was ranked, like he was better than me. Like he ended up going to state. And but I remember I took him down so easily. Like it was like because I had really just let my guard down, I didn't care anymore. Like if I was gonna win or lose, like I just kind of took the pressure off of me um mentally. And I like bang, it was like, dang, like I figured that out. That was I didn't make it, right? I didn't make it to state. So I figured that out at the very end. At the very end that I learned like you should have let it fly more. And so I remember being like, if you had only had that mindset, you know, earlier in the season or last year or when you were younger or something like that, you could have gone a lot farther. But the fact that I waited until the last tournament of my entire wrestling career, I had put in all this hard work and time and effort, and I did, you know, what I thought was the right things. I could have did more, obviously, but I didn't really free myself to believe in myself until the very end. That really ate at me. And I remember like going to the locker room after I had lost, and I remember crying, and I didn't understand why, because at that time it was like you hated wrestling. Your planner says you have, you know, how many days left until it's over. Um, you hated cutting weight, all these things. It's hard. But for some reason you're crying. Like, why are you crying? And it really was, to me, it was just like you had sold yourself way short and you didn't really figure it out until the last minute. And so then it's like it's all over. So it's not like you can use that mentality for next season. So it's like you better use that mentality for the rest of your life. And I think that's kind of what I've tried to do.
Well, you've not only done it, you've kicked ass at it, and you know, again, hearing that story, man, it gives me goosebumps. Uh, it's just exciting to to hear that and to also be able to portray that with other student athletes. If you want something, really, it really is 98% between the eyes and 2% in the legs. Do you agree or disagree?
I 100% agree. I think a lot of times, like, you know, have you heard of the term small guy syndrome or whatever? right? So if you don't know what that means, it means people who are, smaller, they have this like, oh, I gotta validate myself in some way, shape, or form to other people because I gotta prove to them like just because I'm small, I'm this, I'm that. And I think that had a big play like in my life, having insecurity, like not being, the tallest guy or the strongest guy or whatever. So it was like for me, it was always like, how can you beat them other ways? Well, like mentally. So like a lot of times I would try to be funny. Like you might be able to beat me up, but I'm gonna roast you, and you might be able to hurt me right here in this fight, but when you go home and lay your pillow down tonight, you're gonna think about the funny things that I said to you. Um, and so that was always my way of like trying to cope with things or whatever. And then using your brain in other ways would have been much more productive, which again, like I just said, like I didn't figure it out until later in life. And I've realized since then, like, I've used that mentality of like, hey, you don't need to worry about what other people think of you. You don't need to worry about what other people, if they think that you're cool or if you think that you're not cool, because it doesn't really matter. That it doesn't, what they say positive doesn't matter, and what they say negative doesn't matter. And I don't know if you remember, but I got caught smoking pot my junior year of high school.
Um, was I already at Central Lee, or was that my last year there? Was that like 2012?
I think it was my junior year. Alexis probably remembers, but I think it
Okay.
was my junior year. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is like that taught me a lot about like what people think of you and how it doesn't really matter, because a lot of those people, they're either going to be in your corner or they're not. So if you go through something, tough like that, situation I put myself into, then you're gonna get beaten down and everything, but you're gonna figure out what you're made of. And that happens in life in that situation, and then that happens in sports. And so, um, my freshman year of high school, like I didn't win. I don't think I won like any matches. Maybe like two or three, and then you know, I think that made me tougher. And getting in trouble with the law in high school, like that really tears down who you think you are as a person, and who you put all this time and effort into your reputation, and then your reputation can get flipped just because you made a bad decision. And then when you really think about it all, then none of it matters, like it doesn't matter what people think of you, because if you do something good, they're going to let you know. And if you do something bad, they're going to let you know. And it's just all, it's not important.
Well, I think I think you've really kind of panned out my dog mentality, which is my new book that's coming out. I'm gonna throw that out there. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those things where we spend entirely way too much time worrying about what someone who's not going to be at our funeral is worried about. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I think so. And I think that's just something that you can't really like try to like, you can't think of that. Like if you're wanting to be a good athlete or in business or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like if you go out for a sport and you suck at it, no one's like no one's really caring at the end of the day if you're this or you're that. And you just gotta you gotta find a reason. Like if you're doing something for someone else's validation, it's just you're just should already give up, because that's only going to take you so far. You got to really want it deep down inside. And if you don't, and if you're just doing it to get people to say, hey, you're cool, or hey, you're fast, or hey, you're whatever, like you're not going to be very successful at it, I don't think.
and you know what, that's where I throw in this 1% and 99% category, Zach. That one percent's they've already passed that stuff, and they're piling up their small wins on wins on wins, and then they're leaving the other 99% to fight for the meat, so to say, at the bottom, which is continuously pulling them down. And I think that's huge. I think that's huge. It's a huge thing to get over. Some people would call it I don't know, overconfidence. I call it being a beast, being a maniac, which by the way, I was going to bring up your cousin, the maniac. Had a big fight over the weekend, and you were busy with stalemates, but man, that fight.
Yeah, I know. I watched it. I was it was kind of a long day. I was watching wrestling from morning to the evening, and then the main event of the evening was Mikey, and yeah, I mean he did what Mikey's been doing for a long time, which is overcoming adversity and becoming out the champion. There's a saying in our world, "Winners win," and he found a way to win.
What did you think about when he got knocked down twice from that right hook? Were you nervous?
I hate it. And like honestly, like I hate it just because I love Mikey. He's one of the bigger inspirations in my life. And he's not out there playing tag. He's not playing, as Nate Diaz says, touch butt in the park. He's going out there and he's fist fighting somebody. That is his sport. It's not there's not fist fighting at the YMCA, rec leagues, right? For good reason. And it's a real danger every time you do it. It's not like you're just going to go out there and I mean, there's real danger in football, but with fighting, the intent is I'm either getting hurt or you're getting hurt. And so it's I I'm I fully like watching him do it and I love watching him compete, but I hate seeing him get knocked down.
Absolutely. Now, I was able to see the illegal streamed version from Dick England,
Yeah,
and I got to give him a shout out. Thank you for that.
I heard.
Hopefully, Dick doesn't get in trouble for that, right?
I think it was alleged. I think he got hacked.
Oh, he got hacked. Okay, so that's what it is. All right, so I've got two important questions that I want to get your take on. You ready for this?
Yep.
Okay. Have you have you found the opportunity for you and your family that is going to take care of you for the rest of your life?
Like financially,
It could be financially, spiritually, family. The foundation of who you are.
man. I mean, that's tough. I don't know. Have you found the opportunity for you and your family? Um, I think right now we're f- financially set. I mean, I found, I think I got an answer. Um, so I went to Iowa State for 1 year, and then I did fine, like, grade wise, academically, I was fine. Um, Attendance totally fine, but I just was not passionate about anything that I was doing there. And I'm kind of somebody that if I do something, I get obsessed with it and I think about it all the time and I think about it like a video game. And I was trying to do that with marketing and advertising and I just wasn't into it. I was signing up for the clubs and I was signing up for the classes and I was doing I had the all the extra opportunities that Iowa State provided for me to try to make me an academic and I just didn't like it. I didn't like doing it. And so I would sit in class every single day and I would think, how are you going to get out of this? How are you going to stop going to class? You can't just drop out and go back to Centerville because no one will respect you. Again, thinking that self-validation thing, right? And so I'm thinking, like, what could you do that would not require you to be in college or be in school anymore, but you could still take care of your family and have a good life and no one's going to think anything of you. And by way of me making some decisions in life, I ended up thinking one day, like as a joke, I told my dad, I'm like, if Iowa State doesn't work out, I'll just cut hair and be a barber. And there's a longer story to that, but ultimately, I had figured out that Sunday, that popped in my head as like a joke. And there's an inside joke, but I thought of that on like a Sunday, and I think by Wednesday I'd signed up for barber school. I'd like already dedicated my life like 2 days later. That's how much of like an impulse thing I am. Like if I like something, I become obsessed with it. And for 2 days, I was obsessed. So I dropped out and became a barber, and that has provided me the opportunity to do stalemates. It's provided me and Alexis, a good life here in Des Moines. And um, I it's one of those things like I had an opportunity, me and Tyler did to do stalemates full time. Well, to do wrestling media full time. We got flown out somewhere and they took care of us, and I thought we were there to get like an advertising deal and they were offering um us full-time jobs, careers, and I told him no because I like being a barber, and um, it's just like it's just what I do, and so I found an opportunity to do that and just keep doing it.
All right, you ready for part two, man?
Yep.
All right, so here's part two. Are you spending time every week
One,
looking
one
for that
second.
opportunity? Oh, you're good. You're good. Got some techno difficulties, folks, but it's all good. It's all good. Got a couple comments. It's from Rodney. Hey, buddy.
Why is this not
Saying
working?
it happens, man. I tell you. Welcome, Zach from Rodney Hoskins, and then sorry for the lateness. No problem, man. We appreciate you, coming in and listening for us here. But anyway, as you're working on that, Zach, are you spending time every week looking for an opportunity or looking for that opportunity?
Um, yeah, every week I show up, and I got a team of barbers now that work with me, and I've owned the shop since, I mean, it'll be year number 3 in January, and so every week I get the opportunity to work with guys I like hanging out with. We get to talk about whatever. One of my guys is probably one of your former students, maybe Kendall Schwerin. You remember Kendall?
Yeah, I remember Kindle.
Yeah, so I hired Kendall a year ago, something like that, and he's a Chiefs fan. So tomorrow, one of us is going to get an earful of football talk, trash talk, and um, that's what I get to do every day, which is fun.
All right, so we better do an update. It's still 14-6 is the Chiefs ball in the third quarter, so Green Bay's still up. I kind of thought that it was one of those homer games. I was a little bit nervous, going into that game. So if you get it, I kind of picked that. But uh, let's let everybody know where they can find stalemates. I do know that I put it up there a little bit ago. It, are you working on also working on a website as well?
Not really. We try to do like the whole website media blog thing, but it was like we just weren't very good at it. We're really good at making videos and putting out YouTube videos, and so we're like, let's just do that. if that's what people like, let's just be that. We don't need to be everybody else at the same time.
And I like that. You have to find your own niche, and be happy with it. And that's why I'm kind of running all over the place with Dog Pound Radio right now, and eventually I'll get that niche. But it is a lot of fun to be able to sit down and discuss shop with greatness. I'll just say greatness, and you're doing so many great things, Zach. And one of these days I got to get you and T Walk on at the same time.
Tyler would love to do this. I bet he might watch this actually. Um, yeah, I mean, what made you want to get into doing the podcast?
Well, I started podcasting, believe it or not, about 10 years ago, and I started in the paranormal stuff. Got into it, had a huge following, but it really wasn't my passion. My passion is really for sports and hearing stories about people that are overcome, that are able to overcome adversity and become the best version of themselves. And I think ultimately this Dog Pound Radio is really going to pan out. It's exciting to hear the stories and to cover local events because let's face it, Southeast Iowa or South Central Iowa doesn't tend to get the most positive rap. So the more positivity that I can bring to the Fort Madison and Lee County community, the better, in my opinion. So I mean, it's more about that passion for making the world a better place, Zach, and I think this is a way to do that. I've always been good at talking or teaching, so why not share that with the world and really kind of push that forward. Written a lot of books though. Holy cow.
Do you like writing books?
I love it. I like I said, my newest book, it's called The Dog Mentality, and it's called From Mediocrity to Elite, and it's basically one of it's got several different values to it, and this particular book didn't take me that long to write because I was so passionate about it. And then my earlier book from this past year, The Life of an Overthinker. That was a great book because it was kind of my piece when I was kind of let go from the head football coaching position at my previous institution and then switched. I think a lot of times we become so enamored in our goal that we fail to see what God has in store, and writing books and podcasting is definitely my format.
Mm. Heck yeah.
Look at this. Alexis Kosrich, keep doing you. People attract to people who are authentic. Keep chasing those goals, guys, and we appreciate you as well. Uh,
Can I see the
that's what.
comments? Are there comments?
Yeah. Let me throw
Oh,
it up
nice.
there. You
Oh,
got it.
nice. Yeah. So we're live.
Oh yeah, man. We're live on three formats: YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter at CCA Culture. I kind of
Dang, I
well,
should have freaking tweeted it.
that's all right, but it's not Twitter anymore, man. It's X, right? Do you like the new format?
I do actually. I was kind of at first I didn't really people were paying for verification and I didn't do it for a long time. And then when the season started rolling around again, we were like realized some of our Twitter numbers weren't Twitter's our biggest platform. I think I don't know, we got I don't know how many followers, but we end up like we're just like, man, we have a lot of followers. We're not really getting as much of reach that we thought. And so we ended up having well, I did some research and messaged some people who paid for it. And since we started paying for it, it's like, dang, we are getting way more like it's organic reach. It's not like you're paying like for like promoted tweets or anything like that, but they just put your content in front of a lot more people. And so the other day I'd put out a tweet about like Penn. Let me see if I can fix this thing webcam. But Penn State the other day dominated something, and so I put out a tweet saying that they're going to win again. And this guy's like, "Yeah, no," like everybody was like, "Yeah, no, you're going to win or whatever," right? Well, because that tweet got put out from so many people, they didn't understand that I was being sarcastic.
Ugh. How much is it to get verified on Twitter a month?
I don't even know. I think it's like 20 a month or something. I don't know for
Yeah.
sure. I think it's $20 a month.
Yeah, and it just appears that anything sports related, man, if you can get it on X, it's huge. I'm finding a larger and larger following on Instagram, which is weird. Now, I've always had a decent following on Facebook because I'm old, right? Is that
Facebook's, I mean, people are making money on Facebook, so there's nothing wrong with that.
absolutely? And then YouTube is a finicky dog, man.
I love YouTube, but you gotta learn to play first. I'm trying to get my webcam still set up for you, but it's not.
Oh, you're good.
There
You're
we
good.
go.
There you are.
YouTube is amazing, and I think that if you really want to make get yourself out there, and especially nowadays, I could do a whole podcast with you about YouTube because that's my obsession. But the cool thing about YouTube is they will find your audience for you. Okay. So if you're going to start a rock band, you're going to have to go out and you're going to have to play the little bars and you're going to have to, maybe not nowadays or whatever, obviously with streaming and stuff. But back in the day, if you're going to become famous in a band or whatever, you would have to travel around, play your music in front of many people as possible. And then they'd hopefully catch on and hopefully the right person in the crowd would see you and hopefully they'd sign you. And then you get, everything. With YouTube, you make a video. And if they can just tell by the data from people watching the video who should be watching that video, and then it's up to you to get them to click and it's up to you to get them to be entertained. So as soon as we started playing the YouTube game, our stuff just like it was awesome.
TikTok. It's funny that I can play a video with water going on bread and get a hell of a lot more likes or reposts than I do with my positivity content. It's interesting.
We have spent so many like TikTok's insane. So we have one TikTok that did 1.5 million views. Okay. And we put zero. So so Spencer Lee loses at NCAA's, right? And Tyler and I were like drinking and having fun, like we're buzzing, right? And so we go back to the hotel room. I'm like, we're both like pretty buzzed or whatever. Like we're staying at a casino and we're just up there like eating our pizza, like trying to before we go to bed, like get some food in our stomach. And I'm like, hey, we should probably put like something out. It's like Spencer Lee just lost. Like that's one of the biggest like things that's ever happened. Like it'd be dumb if we didn't do like something. And so he hurries up and like he's eating his pizza like over his computer, like writes a little script, records something, sends it to me. I edit it, we post it, and we woke up the next morning and had like 1 million views. And we're like, dang, like I'm not saying we were drunk, but it was like, something we spent a drunk 5 minutes on is the most watched thing we've ever put out. And we might spend like, an hour or two doing a short or something and nobody cares. It's just TikTok's just it's amazing. Like the thing about doing, content is like you got to find out where your people are. If your people are on Facebook, do that. Like look at the pitch in Centerville. They got a whole business on Facebook. Like they have multiple employees and it's all like local Centerville. I know they're like growing into other counties, which is awesome. But like I have an audience that's across the United States and we don't have as many employees as they do. And, our videos get a lot more views or whatever, but we don't have a whole team and staff, and that's because they found out that their people are on Facebook and they figured out a way to monetize it, and they do a really good job doing what they're doing. And so you got to figure out, are your people on TikTok? Are your people on YouTube? Are they on Snapchat? You got to figure that out. We spend a lot of our time on Instagram and we barely did anything with Twitter, and Twitter's the thing that took off for us. And so Twitter and YouTube are big things where like a lot of places they're bigger on Instagram and TikTok and like those platforms. But for us, we resonated more with the people on Twitter than we did anywhere else. So
That's it, and again, I wish Tom would bring back MySpace. It was a lot easier to run.
yeah, yeah.
But we're getting down to the nitty gritty. If you was to look at all of your interviews, and I have my personal favorite. It's from a local guy, and it was about kind of a story about the mob and prison time, which was an amazing story. But if you was to look at all your stories, what would be your Mount Rushmore? Your four?
I mean, you brought up the Joey the Needle one. That to me was like one of my favorite ones. I think I might freeze again, but I do want to tell you this. Um, The Needle was my favorite one just because I had read Joey's book and like it didn't really have anything to do with college wrestling or nothing. But at that time, we didn't know who we were gonna be essentially, and so we are like, well, how are we gonna do this? But he had that connection with Bobby Hoffman, and so it was like MMA fighting, so it was like kind of along the same lines. But Joey's story is just so crazy to me, and I'd read his book in like an hour, not really, but like I'd read it in like a day, and like I don't read books that fast, and so I was like, there's something here with this story, and so I would still love to do something like make a document like a full length documentary about Joey's life, um, but um, the Needles is definitely up there. I've been able to interview a lot of college wrestling coaches that are always good. I don't really like interviewing athletes because I feel like a lot of times they don't want to say something. I don't want to get them in trouble, and like um, they'll give you an answer that they don't want to get in trouble. So it's a lot of times kind of boring.
What would you say Tom Brands? Is he a good interview?
Is a good interview. He's just very intimidating. Um, and he was like one of the first people to uh he was one of the first people dude, right? And so that had happened through a mutual friend. And I remember like I had never interviewed anybody before. Like we actually had gotten our big start through like covering this trial that was happening. This wrestling media company was suing this guy who was almost like the Stephen A. Smith. He's like the Stephen A. Smith of wrestling. And it'd be like if ESPN was suing Stephen A. Smith, essentially. And so we had covered that trial because it happened during COVID. And so it was on Zoom. And so every day I would watch the trial and then I'd go home at night and I would do a recap of the trial. And it started to catch on to a point where they actually brought it up in trial on a hot mic. The judge said something like, or one, I think the defense attorney or said like had left the Zoom on, and she was like, "We should call that stalemates guy in to be like an expert witness because I was watching this." And so we had really gotten our audience, like every day, people were like tuning in to watch what the new recap would be, and we did a good job of doing that. And then one day, you know, we had gotten a lot of attention, and so one day somebody had reached out and they're like, "Hey, I can get you an interview with Tom Brands. Would you want to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And they're like, "Okay, well, we're bringing him to Des Moines. He's going to do Keith and Murphy, and then he'll do you." So I was like, "Dang!" I was like, "Those guys and me, like, I just doing these YouTube videos or whatever, right?" And so a client of mine from the barber game, he owns a bar downtown. I was like, "Hey, can I borrow your bar so I can interview Tom Brands?" He's like, "What? Like, you're a barber? What are you doing?" And so I told him, I have a podcast or whatever, and I'm going to interview Tom Brands. And so he's like, yeah. So he opened it up before it was open, and we recorded it. And what's crazy is, like, I'd never interviewed anybody before. I wasn't doing the podcast to interview people. That wasn't ever the plan. But the lights turn on. I have all this notes. So I'm sitting there shaking. I look over, and he's just looking at me like this. And I'm just like, oh no. And so they told me you have 15 minutes or whatever. And so I did a solid 15 minutes, and then I wrapped it up, and he said, "Is that it?" And I was like, "No, I got a lot more. I just was told I had 15 minutes." And so he's like, "Let's keep going." And so at that point I knew, like, okay, I think this went well. But I was like not comfortable doing it.
Well, it would be like if I ever did an interview with Dan Gable, because Dan Gable is like, the epitome, in my opinion, of what life's all about. You get knocked down, you get back up, and you win, right? I think he would definitely be one of those. I had the opportunity to interview Kurt Hines, who has won multiple district titles and I believe a state title in California, which is crazy because how big California is. And you look at football. That one, I kind of spit and sputtered a little bit, but no, it's phenomenal because I think sometimes we don't humanize these individuals, right?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, they're just people who went through stuff like you and I did, but they turned it into something more positive. Or Dan Gable's a perfect example of that. His sister got murdered, and I would, I don't know if this is true or not, but he probably wouldn't be as great if he didn't have to go through some sort of level of that level of adversity. It takes a lot to go through something like that, and he came out on the other side of it with an Olympic gold medal and being one of the greatest of all time. And not only that, just being, just a great ambassador for the sport of wrestling. And he took a negative situation and turned it into an inspiration.
Hey, do you got any shout outs out there before we call it a night?
Shout out to my wife, and shout out to Tyler Walker. You should have him on here. And shout out to you, and shout out to everybody else.
All right, you've been listening to Stalemate's co-founder.
Yep.
Would you say co-founder Zach Bogle? We'll be back next week. We don't know who in the hell we have, but we'll be fired away.